Hi. My name is John. My wife Emily and I are 45 years old. Everything was like everyone else's. We met, then the wedding, after the wedding, a trip to Europe. Emily is slender, 175 height, blonde with long hair. I was happy with her. Then they started living together. Pretty good, not boring, prosperous. We looked at different countries, acquired real estate, and educated our son. In general, we have been together for 25 years. 3 years ago, my wife told me that she invited her friend, also Emily, to one of the weekends. In general, if they meet, then somewhere in a cafe, park, or take tickets to the theater. But that time it was decided at our house. And my wife asked me to go somewhere so they could sit quietly, have a drink, chat and all that. This was a completely normal request, because I must say that our circle of friendly communication is very small and separate. She has only 2 other friends besides this Emily, and I communicate with only one friend, a classmate. By the way, in the first half of our life together it was completely different. This half was quite a party, and we often visited different places and in large companies. But now, it's not like that anymore. Apparently, the age Sunday has come. At about 12 o'clock, my wife asked me to lay out the table and get the dishes out of the cupboard. After that, she said that she was going to meet a friend, then they would go for a walk in the nearest park and come in 2 hours. I replied that I would leave in an hour and asked when to return. Emily said about 7 o'clock. And she left. After an hour, I started packing. And suddenly I realized that I wanted to know what they were going to talk about. Why? I don't know. I hesitated, realizing the ambiguity of, let's say, such an intention. After hesitating, I still took out my tablet, turned on the recorder and put it in a large cabinet in the room where they were going to sit. And he left. I arrived about 9 o'clock. My friend was no longer there. I asked my wife how everything went. She replied that everything was very good. At about 11 o'clock she went to bed, and I said I'd stay up and went to the kitchen. A little later, I went into another room, took out my tablet and returned to the kitchen, plugged in my headphones and turned on the recording. At first I heard them coming from the street. Then for a while I could only hear their distant voices. Finally they came into the room, put everything on the table and sat down at it. They opened the champagne. I could hear their conversation very well now. They talked about all sorts of nonsense, about everything and nothing. In general, the usual babble for 2 hours. Nothing special. Then they went into the kitchen and for 15 to 20 minutes I heard only voices, but not what they were talking about. When they returned, I realized that in the kitchen they began to discuss completely different subjects, namely personal life and even, better to say, intimate. Moreover, it was clear from their questions to each other that they were mutually aware of what was happening. So, my wife reported some of our sexual relations. As I said, she is a very attractive woman, and we have them. But Emily, a friend, told me that she and her husband had not had a relationship for 2 years, and also that she continues to meet with one of her supervisors at work. Which, as I understood it, my wife was aware of. We talked a little more about various intimate issues, discussed oral sex in detail. A friend, drunk, laughingly gave out that any good subordinate should hold a part of the boss in her mouth. And after a few minutes of their rather piquant conversation, what happened was why this whole story. Emily, a friend, asked her wife, "Emily, how did it happen that you cheated on him so much, and he never found out about it?" Further, well, then the next hour or so of their conversation was on this topic. I will not retell everything I heard here, especially with details. I can only say that I knew that my wife was good at sex, but I was still surprised more than once listening to this part of the conversation. In general, I found out that the first episode happened in '98, that is, 3 years after the wedding, and the last one 3 years before their meeting, which I describe. also found out about at least 4 of my wife's one-time or more or less long-term lovers. Moreover, this is only what she herself told about these cases with facts and details. But as it followed from her revelations, and from the words of a friend, this was far from the whole list. However, there was also something to impress. So, for example, at the age of 33, she had an affair, about 2 months, as I understood it, with some dude 10 years younger than her. She suggested their first sex. When they were walking past the hotel, she asked him if he wanted to come in and arrange a room. Or there was a connection with some foreigner. We met at his apartment. According to her stories, he was very scared of the possibility of becoming infected with the virus. So they practiced other ways to satisfy each other. She soon got tired of this, since she always preferred the classic genre. There were a few more curious places, but that's enough. Summing up this part of the conversation, how did I find out about my wife's infidelities or the past suddenly became different? Emily, the girlfriend, said somewhat dreamily. Yes, Emily. There will be something to remember later. At this phrase, despite my condition, I laughed. Her wife replied to her that she didn't know everything yet. Then they returned to some general topics about different things, and after an hour and a half, the friend began to pack and soon left, and her wife went to see her off. Now about my condition. Initially, I did not want a significant number of erotic descriptions of what I heard to appear in the text, nor do I want to describe my condition in detail. I think that it is already clear to everyone. And what happened next? I sat in the kitchen for a while, being impressed. I thought I'd postpone the conversation until morning. But at about 3 in the morning I went to my wife and woke her up. As soon as she came to her senses, I told her that I had recorded the conversation. To be honest, it doesn't make much sense to retell the conversation that lasted several hours before she left for work. Anyone who has been in such situations knows what these conversations with long pauses are like, when at some point you suddenly realize that everything has already been said, but you want to say something else, although you perfectly understand that all this is pointless. And there were such conversations for a month and a half or 2 after this event. Almost every day. Or rather, they were variations of the same conversation. Of course, they also talked about divorce. But I probably didn't have a serious intention to do it. For various reasons. And it would be quite difficult to describe them here. There were a lot of good things. Son, shared memories. I love her. And something else besides that, and also, I think that the vacation that came soon helped. We decided not to cancel the trip, to go together, and it turned out to be a good decision at that time. Anyway, we're still together. And a short epilogue to a short story. First, why did I write it? I don't know. But certainly not so that someone from the readers would hurry to draw some correct conclusions. Well, for example, about my wrong behavior after it happened. Rather, I just wanted to describe such a life situation. Yes, and it might seem to someone that the tone of the story is quite light, not according to its content. Well, it's been 3 years after all, and I didn't want to somehow make this story a drama. Second, the title of the story. Yes, it's really interesting. I would not have thought that the past could change, become different. But after what I learned, yes, some things from my past life, some moments, events, they have a slightly different look, a different perception. However, it is quite difficult to convey this in detail. These are 2 individual feelings.